What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a special episode of the StayWeighedIn podcast. Special show we like to show called On the Scales. Whenever there's a big fight coming up, we have some guests coming on as well. But before that, I'm here with my man Sugar Ray. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, thank you, man. Listen, man, well rested, getting these fights coming up, so I'm looking forward to it.
I was gonna say it's that weekend. It feels like a big fight. Big fight. And obviously, when we run on the scales, you know it's a big time fight. But before we actually do touch on that, let's go into what we're seeing currently with boxing as well, with Fury, Joshua. And we did a podcast as well just recently. But it looks like we've got a potential fight coming up.
It's not happening. I'm ever the pessimist. It's not happening. Let me tell you something. What AJ's doing is right, though. He's calling Fury's bluff. I don't think it's happening. If it does happen, I still think it's poor timing, but, you know, credit to Team Fury for taking it right now. Obviously, we had Robert Garcia that was commenting saying that he wants more time just to work with AJ, for him to come out to California, get more acclimated, just to start anew. And I feel like Fury doing this fight right now, he knows that. And I feel like it doesn't give AJ that time to maybe take some time off, which I find funny because people are going to make fun of AJ for not taking this fight. But when has Fury ever taken a big fight on short notice like this? But listen, man, he knows what he's doing. He's cashing out on the cash cow. And I still feel like AJ should have waited, because either way, Fury's going to chase him regardless. Fury could go off, become undisputed. He would have still chased AJ if he really wanted it. So I don't think the fight's happening. I hope the fight doesn't happen, in all honesty. And I feel like I need AJ to go back to the drawing board a bit more before this fight happens. But that's just me.
I was going to say there's somebody else who kind of echoed your sentiment as well, with us saying it isn't happening. But with that being said, that's a little intro of what's happening in the boxing world behind the scene. But we're here for the main event. Triple G versus Canelo. Sorry, I said Canelo versus Triple G 3. Happening in Vegas, 168, all the belts on the line. I guess I want to ask you first before we introduce our guests as well. Are you excited for this trilogy?
Do you know what it is? I think Canelo coming off the loss to Bivol and knowing where his mental space is and knowing how Triple G feels about the first two fights and going in there knowing this is his last hurrah at his age, it makes for an interesting dynamic. I think the way I look at it is like, at least media-wise, they have got a good storyline going into this, because people are thinking I combined the two names. People are thinking that Gennady can come in there, you know, bring back the clocks one more time, put in quite a performance against Canelo. And I think because of how Canelo looked against Bivol, some people are underestimating him. But once again, that might then go back to the thing of people aren't giving Bivol the credit for being just a better light heavyweight in general. And Canelo, yeah, he got bested in a weight class that's not his. Ish happens, man. It is what it is. So hopefully he comes back down, he sharpens his tools, dusts his head off, pause. Either way, you need to make sure Canelo's in the right mind space and goes in there, fights the best of his abilities, and we might have another classic on our hands.
So with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Let's bring in one of our guests for the day, friend of the show, boxing enthusiastic, Ozzy. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Anytime. So I asked Ray the question as well before we brought you in. So let's go straight in. Are you excited for this fight?
Yeah, I'm real excited for this fight. The reason being is because I think the fight only goes one way, and I've been waiting to see Canelo's performance against Golovkin, and I think he's gonna wipe the floor with Golovkin. He's touching 40. He hasn't looked good since his last Canelo fight, to be honest. He struggled against Derevyanchenko, but Derevyanchenko hit him with some body shots the way he looked like he was really struggling. And the same thing in the Murata fight as well. Murata hit with some body shots where he looked like he was definitely damaged. So I think those two basically gave Canelo a blueprint on how to dominate this fight. And if you compare the two, if you literally compare what Golovkin's done after the Canelo fight compared to what Canelo's done after the Golovkin fight, they shouldn't be in the same fight anymore. They're leagues apart.
So it's interesting because we're looking at the tail of the tape here, and one thing does stand out to me. Both guys, incredible careers. You mentioned about the age, and both got quite a lot of legs on them in terms of fights as well. One thing that stands out is the loss. So I'm going to ask you, before I go to Ray, that one loss on Golovkin's career is to Canelo. Can that be a psychological factor going into this particular fight? Talking about how you mentioned that one person's trajectory post Golovkin, Canelo, went one way, and then Gennady's went the other.
Yeah, it can definitely have a psychological effect. Mainly, probably not in the way you'd think though, because I honestly think it would be a motivational factor for Golovkin. It'll be the only loss on his record. He'd be like, okay, I want to avenge that loss, so I'm training as hard as I can. I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. This is my last hurrah, as Ray did say earlier. And it could, on the other side, it could make Canelo a bit more complacent. But because Canelo knows I've already beat him, I've beaten before. I've only stepped up since then. I've only gotten better and stepped up. So now I'm only going to go back and wipe the floor with him.
I was going to say though, true also point about that. Outside of Bivol and Mayweather, Golovkin was arguably that fighter who gave Canelo the biggest opposition. And even then, after the two fights, you still have some people saying Triple G won this particular fight. Triple G won that particular. We don't think Canelo won it that clear cut. Is Canelo going to be out there putting on a show to prove to people that he can go ahead and get a victory that everyone unanimously can say, yes, he is the better man in this, Ray?
I feel like definitely Canelo's got to go out there and prove a point, because I think people ain't putting respect on his name. And I think especially after the Bivol fight, he had a situation where he got the reality check, because he was talking crazy on Usyk as well. People forget. And then I think it's a case of Canelo has to go back out there and let people put that fear back into people. Because remember, coming off the Caleb Plant fight, I think he had that fear that people were just like, yo, don't mess with Canelo. He can maybe go up to like heavyweight and do it. He bit off more than he can chew, but I think what he needs to go out there and do is remind the rest of the division, like, yes, I lost that light heavyweight, but super middle, that's still my division. And as long as this is still my division, I'm ruling it. So I think he's going to need a big statement. And I think, especially against Golovkin and how people have spoken about his previous bouts, he's going to want to make a statement.
And with you also, do you think that there's a potential to be a statement? And with that being said, what is the statement if it is? Is it a knockout? Is it a victory on the cause that just looks unanimous? Because we still yet to see a unanimous victory. The last one was a majority decision.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that's the only reason he's taking this fight, because he won the last fight, and the only reason he's taking the fight is because of people saying that he hasn't won cleanly, and people arguing that Golovkin won the fight and blaming the judges. So he's definitely going out there to wipe the floor with Golovkin. He's going out there to make a statement. He's going out there for a knockout, and he's got the blueprint, as I said earlier, with Murata and Derevchenko. So, and obviously coming off the Caleb Plant and coming off the Bivol fight, he's now got even more an incentive to make amends, basically.
I was going to say to you then, just on that, you touched on right at the start when you came in how you can see this fight going only one way. I think we kind of said when Usyk fought Joshua, we thought Joshua was very undervalued in the fight. And not a lot of people were looking at him to win based on what happened. Is Golovkin similar in this particular? Is he undervalued? And should there be more worry from the Canelo camp and Eddie Reynoso?
You know what? I don't think he's undervalued. I think he's overvalued, to be honest. From seeing what a lot of people have been saying, a lot of the ex-fighters, ex-pros, they still hold Golovkin in a quite high regard in terms of, because since his loss to Canelo, he's only lost to Canelo. He's still won all the rest of his fights, although he's only had 4 fights since Canelo, which is 4 fights in the last 3-4 years, is terribly inactive. But he's still held in quite high regards. But I still think he's overrated, to be honest.
What about you, Ray? How do you see this with Golovkin? And because I feel like for me, the consensus is Canelo will win, and it'll be a decision. He won't knock him out. But I haven't seen a lot of people like how the previous fights where they were like, yes, we give Golovkin a chance to actually win the fight. I feel like now the idea is, yes, we think Canelo can win, but can Canelo knock him out? I haven't seen a lot of people personally say Golovkin can win this fight. Is he undervalued?
I think here's the thing. It depends on the value of Canelo, in all honesty, because I think since their last fight, Canelo's then went on a destroying path at super middleweight. So I think that this Canelo now, like not as weight drained, put on a bit of muscle. It's going to be interesting how this Canelo faces him, because the first 2 times they faced each other, the first fight, people say Triple G definitely won. The second fight was a majority decision, which could have gone either way. So I think this fight might be, you could see prime Canelo versus a past his peak Triple G. And with that, the legend of Triple G can't save him. And like Ozzy said, he's been in certain fights where it's like it's not been looking too good for him. He still got the win, but it wasn't looking too good for him. And there are some pros, a sprinkle of some pros, Andre Ward and a few other people that have also mentioned, like, listen, maybe Triple G weren't that guy in the first place, because as soon as he came up against certain names, he didn't look too good. Obviously, people also got to factor in now as well. This is at super middleweight. The previous bouts were at middleweight. So we don't know. That might be a weight advantage for Canelo. That might also be a weight advantage for Triple G. He might not have to cut too much, but with Canelo being more acclimated to this, I think the odds are stacked in Canelo's favor. And as for Triple G's estimation, he's in a lucky space where the guy's 40-something. If he has a good performance, they're going to be like, Raj, you know what? Shout at him. He's 40. Look what he's doing at 40. If he has a bad performance, they're going to say, Raj, he's 40. He shouldn't even be there anyway. He's only there for the payday. So I think it's a double win. It's a double. As long as Triple G isn't completely embarrassed, it's a win for him. It's a payday and a loss at a time where people will expect you to not win anyway. So, yeah.
So let's just stay on that firstly before, if you're enjoying the content, drop us a like. Get involved in the comments as well, because we're live right now, so we can shout you out, hear your views as well. But it's so interesting you said that about the payday. If Triple G loses, and depending on the fashion that he loses, is there a potential that we could see a retirement? Because I look at, like you mentioned about Triple G's age, and I liken it a bit to Khan Brook, but in a scale of, when someone was going to lose, we knew that the retirement was going to happen. I don't expect Canelo to lose personally as well, but if Triple G was to lose, do you think there's a potential for a retirement here, Aussie?
Most definitely. I think he's 40 years old now. You can see him deteriorating in the past few years. He's been quite inactive in the last few years also. I think there's definitely potential for him to retire. There's room for him to retire. Him having 2 losses, and to be honest, there's no one else in the division. I don't think that after Canelo fight, there's no one else in the division that will actually motivate him to get up at 40 years old, having made the money 3 times from the Canelo fights. He will know it's time to call it a day.
So let's break down the fight as well. We saw the first fight, it was a bit more, I guess you could say, technical. In the second one, we had Triple G saying, "He didn't fight me Mexican style." And then it was just a slugfest in the middle of the ring, toe-to-toe, hardly anything against the ropes. So Ray, let's go fight number 3. How do you see this kind of planning out?
It depends. I think what I'm interested in is Canelo at super middleweight has just been running through people. He's been the Terminator. He's gone in there and just absolutely smashed people to bits. He's literally punched people in the arm until their guard comes down and starts whacking them up. And I feel like now it's going to be interesting to see, does he stick with that after the Bivol fight? Because the Bivol fight, he tried to do that and he learned, like, yo, he's a guy that can take punishment and he's a bigger guy, so you can't just go in there and smash everyone. And if you can't smash for everyone, where's your plan B? So now Canelo might go back into this thinking, do you know what, this is super middleweight, so I can go back to doing that. Or he might come back down and say, do you know what, I'm going to learn from that. And my plan B will be, I'm going to embarrass you by outboxing you. And then I'm going to come in for the knockout late. Sometimes you can get complacent. Sometimes it can be a case of once you start getting like a string of knockouts, your boxing skills start to deteriorate because you're just thinking to yourself, I can weather the storm. Because the same thing happened with Caleb Plant. You could argue that in certain rounds, because Caleb Plant didn't have the power to scare him, he was giving away rounds to Caleb Plant because Caleb Plant was very slick. With his movement, he was making Canelo miss, and he was like, Caleb wasn't hurting him with shots that hurt, but it was still landing. But I think because in his mind, Canelo knew that I've got the power to shut him down, that he'll do it. And I feel like, obviously, Caleb's style is different to Gennady. So Gennady might go in there and try to slug it out like he has in the past. But at 40, can you really afford to slug it out? And like Ozzy was saying in that Davrichenko fight, it's like he started getting caught. He started showing that he's human. You're not the Terminator as much as you thought you was. So, like I said, this is the best time for Gennady to just go out there, put it all on the line. At the same time, Canelo needs to go in there, and I feel like it would be a statement if he goes in there, shows some boxing skill, and goes in there and gets a knockout late after displaying such skills.
What about you, Ozzy? How do you see the fight planning out then? And who controls the tempo of the fight?
If I'm to build on what Ray said, I don't think Golovkin doesn't move his head. He has no head movement. He takes shots straight on the head. So he's only gonna come out there and do what he's done, and do what he does in most fights, which is march forward, stand in the middle of the ring, and slug it out. Canelo, on the other hand, has got a lot of head movement, a lot of lateral movement. So I think honestly think Canelo's going to take it to him, but I think he's going to come out the better. The reason I think he's going to come out the better fighter because he can actually incorporate his movement while slugging it out. And in that slug out, I think Canelo, in the previous fights, we've seen Canelo throw a lot of body shots in the previous fights, whereas Golovkin's mainly just goes for the head. So I think Canelo, with a variety of head and body shots and head movement, Canelo is going to dominate that head-to-head clash.
So I guess what I want to say is we've touched on what happens if Triple G loses. Let's go the other way around. What happens if Canelo loses? Ozzy, since you're so firm in believing that Canelo has this quite comfortably, and I'm with you because I'll put this statement out. Love Floyd Mayweather. Everyone knows my feelings about Amir Khan, but Canelo for me is the greatest boxer personally I've ever watched. So I agree. I respect what Floyd's done 50-0, but I think Canelo's the greatest boxer I've ever watched. With that being said, if he loses here, bearing in mind we've seen the backlash with Joshua with what's happened. What happens if Canelo loses here for his career?
What happens with his career? It takes a dent, and but it takes a massive dent. But I want to be able to say, I know there'll definitely be a fourth fight. Triple G's not going to pass up on another payday, and Canelo will want to have that fight straight away. There's definitely going to be a fourth fight, but Canelo's reputation takes a massive dent. Talking about him in terms of the pound for pound ranking, it drops down quite a bit, especially because Golovkin's 40 years old, hasn't looked good, hasn't had many fights in the last few years. So yeah, Canelo's reputation is definitely on the line in this one.
So it's interesting you said about payday because we go back and forth about Anthony Joshua being the big payday in boxing and heavyweight boxing, just specifically. Then, if we're going off the fact that Canelo could lose but Golovkin would still take a fourth fight, how big of a payday cash cow is Canelo in boxing right now? Then, Ray, even with this loss,
him and AJ are 1 and 2. Both of them, I think, even in losses, they're still going to have people clamoring to see them because their fanfare and just their name in general. You've got casuals that know the name Canelo. People might not even know boxing and they know Canelo is someone. So I feel like either way, with Canelo losing is a weird one. I think then it becomes a thing of he's gonna have to go soul searching to figure out what is up with him, because I think where he is in life right now, he's comfortable. And for a lot of boxers, a lot of like all-time greats have always gone to that point where they get so comfortable that they lose fights that they shouldn't have lost. And he goes back to that marvelous Marvin Hagler saying when he goes, "It's hard to wake up in silk sheets." So I feel like he's at that point of his career where you're gonna see the real him as he got that metal to, even with the luxury, still pull through, still show that grit, still show you can be the best, and find new ways to motivate himself to get up and train. And because I think a lot of the time we take Floyd Mayweather for granted for how motivated this guy was for someone that was already so successful. That is not normal what Mayweather was doing. There's a lot of fighters that's like gone down the wayside, all-time greats that have gone down the wayside once they got, certain luxuries in life. So with Canelo, I think a loss for him is going to be a big dent in his legacy, especially the fact that he's undisputed at super middleweight. And with Triple G, I feel like it's almost like Triple G will steal his galore if he wins this. And people are also going to be looking at Triple G like, rah, if Triple G wins this, even if Triple G was to lose the fourth fight, people will still be like, Triple G is the better fighter, only because they feel like he got robbed the first two times. So to win the third one and lose the fourth, then people, like I said, is a win-win for Triple G. If he loses, you're 40, it is what it is. If you win, then they're going to be like, you was always better than Canelo and you finally got your victory. It's like Marquez first Pacquiao, except for Triple G hasn't gone through a second puberty, but shout out Marquez.
See, I'm a bit different in this. If Triple G takes it to decision, I'm okay with that. But then I also can't have it be so one-sided with Canelo personally, because I feel like we'll have to look at Triple G then say you've lost twice, because there was still that little bit of Triple G that complained a bit, believing he had won the fight, etc. Whereas this time, if he goes in this particular fight and gets beaten comprehensively, I'd have to look at it and say, did you really actually deserve this third fight? Because we can see that there are levels above you right now. So realistically, I appreciate what you've done, but there was a reason Canelo won the second fight, and this proves why he's the better fighter. With that being said, who has more pressure going into this particular fight? Open it up.
Canelo definitely has more pressure going into this fight.
I agree.
Because he's expected to win this fight. He's fighting a 40-year-old now. It's like, it's Golovkin, but at the same time, you're beaten before. You expect him to beat him again. It's only looked worse. There's a lot of pressure on Canelo, and he's got a better reputation at the moment. So he's got a lot more to lose.
Okay. One last question before we wrap up and get predictions. The fight itself, it's on in Vegas, which is fine and stuff like that. But I saw a little interview with Eddie Hearn, and they were talking about pay-per-view guys, and he goes, they might do 40, 50,000 in the UK. It's on at 4 a.m. Is DAZN right to push it as part of their pay-per-view subscription, bearing in mind, like we said, it's in the US, and should it have just come with the actual subscription? I understand the magnitude of the fight, but being that it's in the US, are they losing a lot of fan base that way by putting it on the pay-per-view itself, Rick?
Listen, man, when you have a big cash cow like that, you got to pay him. And in order to pay him, you better put everything on pay-per-view. And that's just what it is. I think people just got to understand the politics of it all. You can't have big name like that and think that it's going to come with no pay-per-view. Don't get me wrong, the earlier models, yes. But now, at this juncture, and DAZN's been going on for so long, it's just business. And I understand whether I like it or not, I understand it's just business. So I don't know whether we'll do that much pay-per-views, because I think what also comes with the politics of boxing is the fact that Sky Sports and such isn't promoting in the UK as much as they usually would. So now we're going to find out just how big DAZN is and whether they can have a big media push.
Well, are you similar with that sentiment, Ozzy, or are you thinking that it should have just been on that pay and no pay-per-view model?
Yeah, listen, yeah, I'm still on the old model. I'm not a fan of this DAZN having pay-per-view now because they sold us on just a straight subscription. So I never agreed to their pay-per-view. I mean, they signed Canelo. When they did sign Canelo, they didn't talk about having him on pay-per-view. So for them now to just come and switch it, it's not fair on the fans. So nah, I'm not a fan of it at all.
I was gonna say our producer Andy on the other hand, he's like, Canelo's the pay-per-view star. It's a huge pay-per-view for fights, so it makes sense. With that being said, though, we are gonna wrap up. Before we go, we have to get predictions. So Ray, I'm coming to you first. Where are we going? Are we taking knockout, decision? How's this fight playing out?
I'm saying Canelo unanimous decision or potential late knockout in the 11th.
No,
if it is a TKO, no, not a knockout, a TKO, and it might be a controversial TKO, but a late TKO or unanimous decision.
What are we, Ozzy?
I agree, Canelo late TKO.
I'm taking decision. It's that magnitude of the fact. I just personally can't see it being stopped in any sort of way unless Golovkin is put onto the floor. And if that happens, then Canelo's more special than a lot of people already are saying. Because I saw a lot of people giving him hate when he lost to Bivol, and I was like, you don't understand. This guy moved up. He's 168. He's the king of that division.
People didn't want to rate Bivol. That's why it is.
You know what people forget? He could have been the king of middleweight as well. He could be unified undisputed champion in 2 divisions. If he fought Andrade when Andrade was calling him out when he had 3 belts already, he would have been unified in the middleweight and then moved up and done the same there. So
yeah. But with that, we are going to wrap up today's episode of On the Scales. Ozzy, appreciate you for coming on, man. And come on at any time as well.
Love as always, Ozzy, man.
So thank you for having me. Anytime. Love to talk boxing.
Love. All the guys that are watching live as well, and also you can catch this on YouTube, on the social media, official comments, and your views. As always, guys, it's been another episode of the StayWeighedIn podcast.
Thank you, guys.